Hi, today we will discuss excretion, part 4 of life process lesson. It is the last part of this life process lesson. Now, before understanding the excretion, we should understand that in the living organism, particularly in the cell, inside the cell, there are a lot of biochemical processes takes place. And during this biochemical reaction, lot of products and byproducts are produced. Some of these products and byproducts are not only useless to the body, but in fact they are even harmful to the body or cell. And that's the reason it should be removed from the body of the organism. And that is what the excretion is mainly concerned with. There are the various types of the waste materials are produced. For example, during the photosynthesis in the plant, oxygen is useless or the waste material and it is thrown outside the plant body through the stomata. During the respiration in almost all the living organisms in which the aerobic respiration takes place, carbon dioxide is produced. This carbon dioxide is a useless material and it should be thrown outside the body. And different organisms use different strategies to get rid of this carbon dioxide. Like for in the case of the human being, lungs. Through the lungs we are throwing out the carbon dioxide that is produced. Now one more waste material which is very harmful to the living organism, and that is a nitrogenous waste material. This process involves in the removal of harmful nitrogenous metabolic waste like urea, uric acid, ammonia from the body is called excretion. Now, type of this nitrogenous metabolic waste produced in the organism differs from one organism to the other. In the mammals, including the human being, the main nitrogenous metabolic waste is the urea. In the birds, it is the uric acid, and the aquatic organism, it is the ammonia. Now let us see the excretion in unicellular organism. As in the previous part of this lesson we had discussed, as the unicellular organisms are made up of the single cell, all the life activities are performed by that single cell. It may be the nutrition, is taking in the food, throwing out the undigested food, or taking the respiratory exchange of the respiratory gases taken place by this single cell. The same way, the excretion is also performed by that single cell. As by simple diffusion method, these organisms excrete the waste from their body into the surrounding environment. Excretion in human being. As we had discussed in the previous part of this lesson, in the multicellular organisms, there is a division of labor. Work will be distributed among the different tissues, organ or the organ system. Like for the nutrition, there is a digestive system is there, or for the transportation of material, we have the circulatory system. In the same way, in the human being, excretion is done by the excretory system. Excretory system of the human being, it consists of pair of kidneys, a pair of ureter, urinary bladder and urethra. Pair of kidneys are connected with the renal arteries which bring blood directly from the heart to the kidneys. Inside the kidneys, the blood gets filtered, nitrogenous waste and the other waste material are separated, and that is what we call it as the urine, and this urine from the kidney pass through the ureter to the urinary bladder. Urinary bladder is a muscular a sac-like structure which is elastic, expandable. It can expand and contract. And as it is a muscular organ, it is under the control of nervous system. Urine will be there in this urinary bladder for some time. And when bladder is full of the urine, we get the urge to pass the urine. And through this opening urethra, we excrete the urine. Now, as I told you, urinary bladder is under the control of nervous system. That's the reason we observe that when a person is nervous, they feel that urge for passing the urine will be more for them. Otherwise, it is the normal situation. When the bladder gets full, the person feel to pass the urinate. Inside the kidneys, there are millions of small filtration structures are there, and these filtration structures are known as nephron. Each nephron consists of a cup-like structure called a Bowman capsule. Inside the Bowman capsule, there is an extensive network of blood capillaries called the glomerulus. Bowman capsule is connected to the tubule, a long tubule. This tubule has a three-part. The first part is the proximal tubule, which is connected to the Bowman capsule. The second part of this tubule is hairpin-like structure. This is called the loop of Henle. And the third part of this tubule is connected to the collecting duct called the distal tubule. Around this loop of Henle, there is again the extensive network of blood capillaries are there. Now let me understand how the urine is produced in the nephron. This Bowman capsule absorbs the liquid part of the blood, including the water, dissolved amino acids, salts, glucose, and the other material, including the nitrogenous waste. This liquid part is called a filtrate, and this pass from the Bowman capsule, it passed to the proximal tubule. And from proximal tubule, this filtrate passed to the loop of Henle. In the loop of Henle, the surrounding blood capillaries reabsorb the water and the other essential material, including amino acid, salt, and the glucose. A reabsorption of the water depends upon the two factors, the amount of water needed by the body, and the second factor, the amount of water needed to remove the dissolved waste material. That's the reason if the dissolved waste material, that is nitrogenous waste, is more, the more amount of the water needed to excrete. Again, the amount of the glucose reabsorb, glucose, salt, and other materials which are dissolved into that filtrate, which is present in that filter, reabsorption of this material depends upon the requirement of the body. For example, in the diabetic people, the amount of glucose present in their bloodstream is more, so naturally in the filtrate, the more amount of the glucose is there. But these blood capillaries reabsorb only the amount of glucose needed by the body, and remaining glucose will remain into the filtrate and through the urine, that is also thrown out. And that's the reason in the diabetic people, the first test is done is the urine test. Now this filtrate, which contain the nitrogenous waste and the other waste material, useless material, now pass through the distal tubule to the collecting duct. Collecting duct is the common duct connected to the distal tubule of many nephrons. And from the collecting duct, the urine go to the ureter and then the urinary bladder, and through urethra at last thrown out of the body. In the case of the human being whose kidneys are not functioning properly, what happened? The nitrogenous waste is not removed from their body. And in that situation, as the nitrogenous waste are very harmful, poisonous to the body, the too much accumulation of these waste in the body, it will result into the even death of the person. What are the reasons of damage to the kidney? There are the various reasons. The first is it might be the infection. The second is because of the injury. And the third reason might be the medicines or some chemicals which damage the kidneys. And these people, the person with the kidney damage, the main treatment is a kidney transplantation. But there are the various challenges for the kidney transplantation, like the donor should be available and the tissue matching of the donor and the recipient is very, very essential. And due to this reason, there are the many people don't have as the lack of the donor, the cost for operations, if they are not able to afford, these people cannot go for the transplantation. In that situation, there is one more technique where the nitrogenous waste from their body is removed by an artificial kidney by the process called the dialysis. During this hemodialysis, the blood from the patient body is removed by using the small pump, and this blood passes through the network of the tube-like structure into the dialysis machine. These tube-like structures have the semi-permeable membrane like a cell, and these tubules or the tube-like structure are immersed into the dialysis solution. Dialysis solution have the same osmotic level of the blood, but this dialysis solution lack nitrogenous waste. Now, as the blood is passing through this tubule, the nitrogenous waste from the blood, it will pass to the dialysis solution. And this dialysis solution now which contain the nitrogenous waste, it will be removed from the another end. The blood, once this nitrogenous waste is removed, again it is given back to the patient. And next, to understand how the excretion is done in the plants. In the case of the plants, as we have discussed, they have different strategies for all the life processes, like nutrition we had observed the transportation also we have studied, and they have always the different strategies of this life processes than the animal, including the excretion also. The excretion also in the plants, they have the different strategies. Carbon dioxide, which is the respiratory product in the stem and the roots, are excreted by the pores on the stem called the lenticel, and through root hairs it is released into the surrounding soil. Oxygen, which is the waste material during the photosynthesis, thrown or excreted by the stomata. Then there are some other waste material produced in the plant, and generally the plant will store this waste material into the old leaves. After sufficient enough amount of the waste is stored into that old leaf, plants simply lose that leaf. And that's why we are seeing the leaf is turning yellowish color as it is getting the older and older because of the accumulation of the waste material in them. Then the excess of the water in the plant is excreted or thrown out by the transpiration method through stomatal pore. Then there are some more waste materials are there which plants store into their old xylems. For example, resin, gums and all, etc. Sometimes if there is any cut is there in the this xylem part, this resin and gum oozes out. And this resin and gum have tremendous commercial value for the human being. We make a lot of products from this resin and the gum. Some of the waste material, root hairs will, plant roots will release into the surrounding soil. So this is the end of this lesson. Thank you.